Cutting is the exciting form that film can bring to storytelling. In other words, for the audience to be in on something that the characters aren't, that all the characters aren't aware of. And so we can enjoy their confusion, their reaction, the fact that they're talking about cross purposes is an exciting form.
What's that?
Well, she says it's kind of gaudy, but that's the same kind of comment. She says Chagall is kind of gaudy, but it's the same kind of comment that she makes at the beginning of the film about the flowers. And what comes out is, and I've seen this in many people, they say a vaguely derogatory thing about something while they're being positively affected by it, but they're almost rebuking themselves for getting sustenance from something.
To believe in coincidence is one of the greatest crutches that one can have if you're writing, because it solves most of your problems. Oh, he just showed up. Well, why? Because you wanted him in the scene. Oh, yeah, but it was a coincidence. I only buy coincidence so far. I think there's a lot of coincidental things happen in our lives. I would like to believe that most of the things people do are motivated. And there is a reason why most things happen. And although coincidence does play a part in our lives, I don't think it plays as important a part as Shanley would like us to believe. But then that's also part of his charm, because he is kind of dealing with myths and fairy tales. There's a kind of a larger-than-life style that's imposed upon characters, and that's what I like about his writing. He's writing about things. He's writing about death. He's writing about love. He's writing about things that are very deep, I think. And he's got a level of depth behind his writing that makes it different than just another humorous romantic sitcom type play or screenplay that's looking for the laugh. The opera itself on stage was shot much later and in another country in a different theater. So I actually talked them through the opera when they were reacting to it. In other words, I said he's reaching out and he's going to take her hand, and I played the opera in the background.
And of course, Nicky knew it really well, and Norman knew it really well, and me not knowing anything, me being the cultural deficient that I am, I didn't know it. So we sit down, and the music starts playing, and Norman starts explaining it. And he was doing such a great job of explaining it, and the music was so fabulous that the scene just worked. I couldn't really help from crying. I really liked the way I cried in it, too. I thought it was like my best work. And then when we were finished, Norman was crying. So I figured, well, that must be pretty good. And that was a sample. I mean, that was a complete instance where if you look at Nicky in that, he is totally playing it close to the vest. There's no overacting there.
So it was like shooting a silent movie. It became a very intimate moment between myself and the actors, and I really enjoy that, because I hadn't had that since the chess scene in Thomas Crown Affair, where I did the same thing, where there's no dialogue involved, so you can actually talk to the actors.
To me, when I saw La Boheme, I was like, this is such an un-Hollywood story. It really makes no sense on an emotional level as like a satisfying experience if you were just to tell this story about these two people who get together, but the woman who has tuberculosis and at the end she dies. It's kind of amazing to me that this is like a hit show. And that Ronnie recognizes that that's part of life. This is it's a tragedy, and the woman dies, but it's very moving, and it's kind of wonderful all through. The music takes you to places that you really do want to go. That is an affirmation of life, and it doesn't have a fairy tale ending. You do ruin yourself and break your hearts and love the wrong people and die. That's the story of La Boheme, and that's the story that interests Ronnie.
That woman was not my mother, okay? That's my house.
You mean the whole house?
Perry, the professor, at the beginning of the scene, he's just lonely. He can't find anybody who'll eat with him without, throwing water in his face. And of course, the other thing is, and the problem that made the girl throw the water in his face, is that she's not that interesting to him. She has no life experience, and yet he's spending his time with her, talking with her about things that concern her deeply. But in fact, he's just too old to have the same concerns. He's closer in spirit to Rose in terms of life experience in some ways. And so wouldn't it be relaxing and nice to have dinner with this woman instead? And he does, and they do enjoy it. And at the end, he tries on the idea of having a fling with Rose. But she's like, well, of course you can't do that, because I know who I am.
I'm too old for you.
I'm too old for me. It's my predicament.
Night.
Tonight. Can I kiss you on the cheek, too?
Sure. Good night.
Good night.
I think the thing about the movie is that it's very natural in the way that it's told. The way the story unfolds. And yet for some reason, and this is the mystery of storytelling, you're surprised. You're just a little bit surprised all the time at what happens. Even though it's very natural and it unfolds in an almost predictable way, still you're always just a little bit surprised. And I think that tracks into something that Stanley Kubrick once said. He said, "A story that works is a miracle."
Well, I think, like I mentioned before, that the whole film was shot with the feeling of an opera behind it, or in the style of an opera, where the characters are a little bit larger than life and so on. And each character has their own arias.